Hi, I'm Sharon, and in these difficult times, my purpose in writing these stories, as you know, is simply that I think we need to take some time during our day and smile. And if we can laugh, that's even better. So, as you watch today, if you check in with me, it really encourages me to keep writing and keep sharing. Today, I've combined two stories into one, and the title is The Dog with a Stiff Upper Lip. And yes, the stories are based on true events. And the basis of my story is a man who refused to be bullied. Now, death is never funny, but I did learn as a mortician in Texas that some in my profession are hysterical. In fact, some are just plain nuts. Well, that may include me too. I, as you know, exaggerate the humor because to me that's what makes it funny. The characters are based on real people that I know. They're a conglomeration of relatives, my more eccentric ones, and friends and acquaintances. You'll remember from my previous stories that Beauregard Wienerman is based on one of my sizable uncles. He had a glass eye, and as a child, that was really distracting to me because I honestly never knew which eye to look at. One would be looking one direction, and one would be looking at another. I'm introducing another character this week that I was very fond of. He was a caretaker named Henry Abbott, who was sometimes looked down upon because of his position as a caretaker or custodian of the funeral home. But let me tell you, he was nobody's fool, and he was a very close friend of mine. In fact, his family grew sweet potatoes in South Texas, and oh my goodness, he would bring home back to us a bushel basket of sweet potatoes, and my gracious, they were the size of a football. Oh my goodness, I've never seen anything as large as them. They would make a whole meal for Dwayne and for me. Well, now to my story. Beauregard P. Wienerman pulled the company lead car, a black Cadillac, onto the interstate through Dallas. The car was one of the fringe benefits that Marilyn's father, Fallon Pressman, an owner of Pressman Mortuaries, provided to all of the funeral home managers. Something off to the side of the expressway caught Beauregard's one focused eye. A motorist had hit a bull mastiff earlier that morning. Sad for the dog, but good for me, Beauregard thought. He wasn't about to hurt any animal, but since this one was already a goner, he was willing to take advantage of the situation. His eye became a slit in a jack-o'-lantern grin. His glass eye never participated in holiday look-alikes. He wheeled the Cadillac around and pulled over to the side of the road. He examined the dog's carcass thoroughly. It's a humongous one. Yes, man, oh man, I can use him. Body looks perfect. Henry will never know this dog is dead by the time I'm through with it. He smirked. Rumor around the funeral home was that old Henry, the porter of the mortuary, was terrified of dogs. All the funeral home employees referred to the custodian as Mr. out of respect for this seasoned veteran of the funeral business, except Beauregard, who didn't bother with the title mystery or Mr. After all, Henry was just a grunt of the funeral home. I'll get even with Henry for telling me right to my face that I was as useless as a rudder on a duck's rump. It's a good thing no one else was around, or I'd have given him a piece of my mind. And then when I told Fallon, what did he do? Nothing. And when I complained to Bessie, what did she do? She counseled me to respect Henry more, and I get more respect in return, and blah, 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 blah. I don't get the respect I deserve. Well, Henry will remember this lesson for as long as he lives. More than one manager had hassled Mr. Henry about his uni-arsenal, but Fallon had never banned his shotgun. Of course, only Fallon and Henry were in on the big secret. Henry's much embattled shotgun was only filled with rock salt. Beauregard broke into a sweat as he heaved the canine's huge corpse into his car. He jammed the trunk shut while his body trembled with excitement. "Oh, don't speed, don't speed, don't speed," he said to himself. "It will be difficult to explain a dead dog in my trunk if I get picked up for speeding, and Fallon will throw a fit if I get another ticket." Beauregard wheeled into the funeral home garage. No one was around except Henry. What luck, he thought. Beauregard hollered out the window, "Hey, Henry, go check the front of the funeral home. I think I saw a dead animal in the burial pit." Beauregard sneered. "Yes, sir, Mr. Weenie Man," Henry said as he ambled off. "Wienerman, Wienerman." Old man can't even get my name right. No one knew the age of Mr. Henry, but they did know that he was from the deep South, and his dialect reflected it. Beauregard watched until Henry disappeared around the side of the building. It was no small feat for Beauregard to hoist the canine remains out of his trunk. He watched out for Henry as he tugged the cadaver past the porter's workroom. "I can't believe this fool man keeps a shotgun in his workroom. He's going to shoot himself in the foot one day. Well, when the inevitable happens, I'll be danged if I give him any sympathy. I don't even know why Fallon lets him keep that thing. I'm pretty sure the dead people are deterrent enough for any would-be burglar. Fallon is a moron for letting Henry keep that weapon." Beauregard propped open the embalming room door with one foot and grunted as he shoved the dog through and quickly bolted the door behind him. He didn't want to take any chances on anyone spoiling his revenge. He used the mortuary's portable lift to hoist the animal up on the white porcelain embalming table. Whew, without this hydraulic body lift, I'd never get this critter up on the table. He scurried around the room like a bloated weasel, whistling happily as he selected the fluids to preserve the body. During the embalming process, Beauregard positioned the dog's legs to stand on its own paws. The pickled dog was certainly intimidating, if Beauregard had to say so himself. "Yes, now that's a good doggy," Beauregard said while doubling over with laughter. Meticulously, he positioned the dog's mouth into a ferocious, stiff upper lip. Perfect, vicious, so realistic. Mean snarl. "Oh, I'm good," good. I am really good." He stood back and admired his creation. "Shut the front door. I'm great." Beauregard pulled off his rubber gloves slowly, one finger at a time. He danced while he ripped off his embalming gown. Beauregard couldn't wait for Henry to be the butt of his joke in front of all the other employees. Beauregard sneaked out of the preparation room and around the corner into the flower room. He borrowed the flower cart and wheeled it back to where his embalming masterpiece was. Beauregard used the portable lift to place his creation on the cart and then rolled it out to where the trash cans were. He placed his guard dog strategically in front of the cans. Then he lumbered back into the funeral home. Oh, this was going to be the gag of all gags, the prank of all pranks. Beauregard two-stepped to the Muzak all the way to the front of the funeral home. He saw Henry sitting in the foyer with the funeral director. Henry, as usual, had a fresh cup of coffee in his hand. "There weren't no animal out in the pit, Mr. Weenie Man. I walked it twice." "Wienerman, Wienerman." The funeral home director smiled into his coffee when Mr. Abbott said that. "Go empty the trash out of the preparation room," Beauregard said. "Yes, sir, Mr. Weenie Man. I'll get right on it." Beauregard looked at the other funeral director. He gets more senile every day. Beauregard trailed Henry out the back door. Then he went over and pretended to retrieve something out of the first car so that he could watch Henry's reaction. Henry had stopped to gather the trash when he saw Beauregard out of the corner of his eye. He looked out toward the trash cans, put down the plastic trash bag, and walked back to his workroom. Henry had been with the company for over 40 years, time enough to see several managers come and go. Henry had endured because he understood the system probably more than any other employee. Henry plopped down in his chair and propped his feet up on the workbench. He eyed his shotgun and thought, the shells don't have a lot of power, but they certainly lodge themselves in the flesh and sting. "Henry, where the devil are you?" Beauregard stuck his head in Henry's workroom. "Up front now." The scream rousted Mr. Henry from his pondering. He plunked his left foot down leisurely, followed by his right. Beauregard dogged Henry back up to the front of the funeral home, where the rest of the funeral employees had gathered. He waited until he had everyone's attention. "So, Henry, did you get the trash out?" "No, sir. There was a problem at the trash." "Yeah, what kind of problem, old man?" "Well, sir, there's a mighty big dog out there, and once it moves on, I'll get the trash right out." "Come on, Henry. I'll help you chase that big, bad hound right out of there. You lead the way." Beauregard winked at the other employees and motioned them to follow him. "Come on, all of you." Mr. Henry, in his blue-on-blue creased uniform, positioned his coffee cup on a coaster, slowly rose from his chair, and followed the other employees as they walked out to the back parking lot where the dumpsters were kept. Beauregard pointed to the trash site, smirking. Is that big, mean old Poochie that you're throwing a hissy fit over right there? Is that the one that's terrifying you, Henry? Yes, Mr. Beauregard, that's a bad dog. And if I take the trash out now, why, he'll eat me alive. It almost seemed to Beauregard like Henry was ridiculing him, but, well, that just couldn't be true. After all, it would be impossible for Henry to put anything over on Beauregard. Henry wasn't even literate. And Beauregard graduated from Mortuary College. Well, it's true, he graduated at the bottom of his class, but he did graduate. Beauregard's grin flooded his face, his entire face. His shoulders shook with the satisfaction of an evil plan coming to fruition. He tried to speak, but his voice only erupted into hisses of laughter. Finally, he slobbered, "Now don't you worry, Henry." He patted Henry on the shoulder and sputtered out, "I won't let that big old varmint eat you." Beauregard bent over in laughter and crossed his legs. Laughter might be good for one's soul, but it was really hard on the bladder. Mr. Henry slipped out of the crowd. No one could blame him. The reluctant audience just wanted to look away and pretend none of this was happening. However, Beauregard was their manager. Beauregard was definitely the center of attraction. He too stepped over to the dumpster, singing at the top of his lungs, "You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time." He had just bent over to put his arms around the mastiff's neck when a shotgun blast knocked him off his feet and squarely onto his colossal-sized buttocks. He bounced twice. Beauregard rolled over and covered his head with his arms. He screamed, "I've been shot! Somebody call 911! I need an ambulance! I'm dying!" Then he heard muffled snickering from bystanders. He peeked from under his left arm and saw Henry holding his shotgun. Beauregard's butt stung. It burned. He thought he was literally on fire. Thank goodness there was no blood, just incredible pain. Mr. Henry looked at Beauregard and smiled. "Sorry, Mr. Weenie Man. I was shooting at the big old mean doggy. I was scared that he would bite you. Guess my aim was off a little. That's only rock salt in your butt. Won't do no permanent damage. Just slow you down a little." Henry grinned. The crowd dissipated back into the funeral home before bursting out into full-blown hysterical laughing. There was a reason that Mr. Henry had lasted all these years at this funeral home. He understood the system. He wasn't bullied by it. I was proud to call him my friend. Mr. Henry could hold his own with the big dogs. I hope you enjoyed this story and laughed a little. If so, let me know. Have a blessed day.